I have a lovely group of people that have joined me today that either work closely with me over the years or are close collaborators and or have been part of the events that we've run this year. So I'm going to start with Laura, who has just flown back from New York and she got about an hour before she falls asleep. So Laura, could you say a couple of quick words about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Natal. Happy festive season to everyone. I am probably nearly festive seasoned out after New York. It's like Christmas on steroids. So I'm the CEO of two companies, Hive Learning and Hive Perform. Hive Learning is a learning tech company that's helping to create behavior change in organizations, mainly around leadership. And as you can imagine, this year has been a lot around how to adopt the right mindset and behaviors to then lead with AI across organizations. And then Hive Perform is all about connecting salespeople to performance. And so looking at the same principles but applied across sales teams. So that's me. Looking forward to joining the conversation today.
Excellent. So we're going to ask Laura in particular, what is it like to be a business leader in this environment that we've had? And of course, grill her on all our AI questions because she's our resident expert. Cool. Helen Matthews will hopefully be joining us at some stage during the session. Is quite ironically been asked to join an end-of-year meeting on AI and her new workplace. But Helen is a CPO that also is really taking a lead in looking at AI workplace policy. When she joins us, she can share some of her kind of very hands-on examples of building policies and approaches on how do you kind of upskill your people to then enable AI across the workplace. So it'd be great when Helen joins us. Her background is a CPO for many years, particularly in the world of marketing and branding, and has led companies such as Ogilvy. I'm Natal Dank, and I am your host. I'm also the CEO and principal consultant of PXO Culture, and I've written a couple of books about agility, and I'm particularly starting to look at what we're calling workplace elasticity. So you're going to hear a lot more about that in 2026. There may even be another book coming. Who knows, hey? Okay, over to Eoin. Eoin, you're joining us from the Netherlands. Could you say a couple of quick words?
Yeah, I am an independent coach and consultant. I'm very focused on bringing teams together to work better because I find, particularly in matrixed organizations, it's really hard to get stuff done for a variety of reasons. Part of that came out. I used to work in global marketing, and I found that the teams who worked best were ones who were able to build networks and influence beyond just their position. I've worked with Natal for many years. We first met in London, and that's where I lived for a long time. I came here about 6 years ago by way of, and also Spain, and as some of you will know, Irish in my heritage. So looking forward to talking
And
to
his
you.
name it's pronounced Owen, even though it's not spelled that way.
Exactly. I'm
Like
just going to
all
write
good
it like how it's
Irish
pronounced in the
names.
chat.
Yeah.
So just don't look at the name there.
Cool. And Janet, could you say a couple of quick words?
Yep. Hi, thanks. Nice to see everybody. I'm Janet Scotcher. I was the Chief People Officer for Cambridge University Press and Assessment. More recently, I'm a non-exec in the public sector. I also work closely with Natal and have done for quite a few years in various guises, both as a client and as an associate. I have a number of HRDs who I mentor and support through some of these interesting, challenging times.
Excellent. Fabulous. So 2025, the year that made uncertainty the norm, is our theme today. And as I just shared, basically don't do any icebreaker reflecting on this year because it will quickly descend into a doom loop. So let's have a look at what happened when we asked all of you what your thoughts were about 2025 when you signed up for the event. So we asked you, what was your key takeaway or headline from 2025? The word cloud seems to say it all. Basically, AI, I think, sits nearly in every sentence that's across the word cloud. AI everywhere is basically the theme. But there was some really, really interesting kind of call outs. So I wanted to share some of the quotes that really sort of stood out for me. And there seems to be this kind of blend between we've just experienced the worst job market ever, people saying the global system is in flux, shocked but not necessarily surprised, a year of maximum positive disruption. And then it sort of shifts a little bit where people are sort of talking about, well, AI hasn't taken over yet. And actually, there's now evidence of AI maybe not being all the hype and all the promise that we were led to believe, particularly at the start. And as we all know, we're now seeing AI as one big bet. The S&P 500, the top 10 stocks, represents 40% of its value. We're now seeing more and more kind of stats coming out. MIT said that 95% of AI projects and pilots are not going through to production. So we're starting to see a shift in this kind of the promise of AI, but we've also now kind of over leveraged in that area. What I then started to kind of lean on was that actually out of uncertainty comes creative choice. And this is a big theme that Margaret Heffernan is writing a lot about at the moment. And she's written a new book called Embrace Uncertainty. And it's the idea that when things are so uncertain and changing so much, all bets are off, basically. You can really lean in and start to make choices that you maybe thought weren't possible before. And so with this comes maybe more opportunity that we didn't quite appreciate in the past. I'm going to maybe go over to Laura and just ask you, what's it like to be a business leader in this environment over 2025, what I'm calling fundamental uncertainty? And I'll talk a bit about that soon.
Yeah, I think a bit like what's reflected here, it feels a bit like a balanced scale. So like on one side, it's been probably one of the most exciting years in my career as a business leader. We were able to incubate and build a brand new business that's doing things we could never do. Like I could never tie data to performance, to return on investment. Like I could never get to in the flow of work and all those buzzwords we've used for years. Like they're starting to become possible. We're starting to reimagine what things look like. And that has given me more energy in a workplace as a business leader in a product world than I've ever had. On the flip side, probably how it feels to be someone who's looking to use AI and knowing what the market's saying. I think we said AI was existing all over that word cloud, as it does. So as a business leader, we've incubated an AI native business. So we've put AI on what we do, but trying to explain how we use AI in a way that's different to other people using AI, where you get AI slop, where you get AI can only be used when the data and the context are really robustly built into the solution, and navigating all of that stuff in selling your product is incredibly hard with a market that there's a lot of marketing which is stating big promises and then under delivering, and people having this kind of trough of disillusionment, and then feeling like you've got something that's good, but you've got to really educate and take people on a journey and showcase it. You've got to be evidence-led, you've got to be referral-led. So as a business leader, I think trying to think really smartly about how you properly still solve problems, and you focus on the customer, and you focus, in fact, agile is it, right? Never before, I think, has agile been more important in how you work to support the customer's outcomes. Because on the flip side, how it feels to be a customer knowing whether to buy or build or navigate AI is so complex and so unknown. And there's a whole load of stuff that none of us know, right? As an AI leader building AI products in an AI native team, there's a load of stuff I don't know. And so we're all kind of going into the unknown, but we're also trying to navigate what we do know and what works and what doesn't work, and iterate and fail fast. So I think it feels a little bit like how it feels to be the person on the other side as well, a buyer or a customer or someone in HR looking at how do I adapt these solutions and put it into the business. Yeah, that kind of, I love two words you've used today. I love elasticity. The ability to like evolve and learn and iterate this year has been phenomenal, and creative choice. That's where the excitement levels are. And then the gnarly challenges of like navigating the unknown are so real right now. So yeah.
Definitely. No, I like that. So yeah, workplace elasticity is our new kind of term that we're playing with. The idea of being able to bend and stretch and come back together again. We're sort of seeing it as the evolution of agile. So it's sort of agile 2.0 when you start to think about it in an organization. So we'll talk a bit about that. And then definitely this idea of creative choice. So I pulled this particular quote out of all your submissions, and I thought this actually blew me away. So that it's been the hardest year I've ever known in decades of work, but some creative tension has resulted in one of the biggest ideas I've ever put into the world. And I just thought that for me was amazing. And this is what you're starting to see is that that with uncertainty becomes this, elasticity, but also anti-fragility. So anti-fragility is the idea that not only are you kind of resilient through times of change, but actually you're able to seek out new opportunities, growth opportunities. You actually can lean into the uncertainty and change to actually create something that was maybe not even possible before. And while I think it's very scary, it's not like it's really easy to do. It does give that sense of hope through that. And I think it's something that the more that we can actually lean into uncertainty, kind of get comfortable with it being the norm, the greater ability we have to make some of these creative choices. And I think that's quite exciting. So the next thing we asked you was if you could sum up in one word how 2025 felt for your workplace, what would that word be? Now, this did go a little bit negative. I'm just going to warn you. And for some reason, lots of D's: deflated, disruptive. Excuse me, I've had a bit of a cold. But there's also fluid, volatile, dynamic, interesting. And I think that's a British interesting, if anyone needs to clarify. Lumpy, I thought that was nice. Challenging, enshittified. So I'm not sure if anyone's come across this term, but it was actually made a word of the year last year, enshittification. And it's the idea that our services are all slowly degrading as things become more digital and people try and do more with less. And so what started off as maybe a great experience on Instagram now is that you're, fed all these products by the algorithm. You don't really know what your friends are doing anymore. And actually you're going into a kind of polarized debate. So this is the enshittification of our world. Janet, a couple of words to you, excuse me. What's your thoughts about what people think of 2025? Any reflections from you?
Well, I definitely recognise the enshittification, but sadly, I think what I'm seeing is people having to really try and do more with less. This real expectation that HR is going to solve some of these problems, and people feeling, just as Laura was describing, this kind of pressure to use AI to kind of understand how to deploy it, when actually the kind of level of knowledge and understanding of what that's going to do to their organisation is quite difficult. And I'm seeing that kind of at sort of board level and also just within HR functions as well. I think the other thing that's interesting is really thinking about skills and thinking about strategic workforce planning is going to increasingly become the thing, and a kind of sexy on steroids version of strategic workforce planning that takes the kind of best of AI and allows you somehow to kind of navigate this elasticity. Because, what's going to be more elastic than having a load of skills in an organization that you can deploy in an agile way, as opposed to just having traditional jobs. So having lots of conversations about disrupting jobs, disrupting job descriptions, really thinking about things. And I think it still feels for a lot of people like quite a scary place to go, but it also just feels like it is the opportunity for that creativity, as you said.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that, the new kind of forefront of strategic workforce planning is a really interesting space. And I was just spent a week with a company that they're at this kind of really interesting kind of point with their product in the market. So they've had to totally transform. They've got a whole new kind of product opportunity. But also, if they don't make it, it's kind of make or break time as a business. And so it's also there's real skin in the game. And part of it is, yes, if we can make this work, it's going to be wonderful. But actually, there's all these things that could actually go wrong as well. So I feel like there's this tension, which again is the more that we can help our businesses solve the big problems, knowing how to put the right people in the right places, understanding how we actually start working alongside machines could actually be the differentiator in a competitive marketplace. Yeah.
Yeah, and also how do you manage the quality, right? So if you've got agents and you've got people, and then what's the governance around that? What is your operating model? I mean, these are all really exciting questions that I think we're just kind of
Yes,
in the foothills of starting to explore, really.
exactly, definitely. Okay, so that was your reflections about 2025. As we said, it's not all over. It's not, hope is not lost. The hope is the last thing to die. So I feel like we need to embrace Star Wars and kind of see us through into 2026. One thing also that happened in that icebreaker that I did is that the conversation started to shift. So what also happened is that people said, well, we're actually seeing more and more displays of humanity. So people speaking up, people questioning the polarized debate. We've seen some pretty kind of scary kind of political kind of actions across the world and some very racist actions in some parts and racist protests. But at the same time, we've also seeing people stand up and really supporting people from other backgrounds, religions, and of course, set at a time when there's been the horrible attack in Bondi, which was my hometown for many years when I was younger. So I think you're also seeing kind of things starting to shift in that way. So what we want to do is think about what does this mean for our organizations? Because there's a lot of research that's showing at the moment that people are actually wanting to turn to their organization as a place to trust. So there's the kind of the lowest level of trust for media and politics at the moment across the world. And what people are sort of seeking is where can I go and put that trust? And one of the number one that keeps coming up is actually their employer. So if you kind of start to build a more robust people EVP, one that says that, we work with digitalization, we work with AI, but we're really people first. You actually could really stand out in the market, and people are kind of wanting their employer to kind of stand for some certain values in the community. So it also gives, again, this opportunity from this immense kind of time of turbulent change. So what we're going to do for the rest of the session is we're going to work through a couple of key topics that have come up this year. We're going to reflect on that topic, sort of what is it, what happened. We're then going to give you some reassurance that you're not alone. And actually, there's some really good things that you can do in this space, and offer some of the examples that we've worked with clients with or have seen in our ways of working across the year. And then just do a little bit of a reset. So how do we actually move from this point of kind of deep reflection into action in 2026? And how do we do that with as much positivity as we can? Okay, so first topic is the year that was. So some of you might have seen that I started to use a term called fundamental uncertainty. And I actually coined it a couple of years ago when it felt like there was a lot of change, and I brought it back. And fundamental uncertainty is kind of suggesting that we've moved beyond just kind of a time of change where actually it's VUCA, it's volatile, it's uncertain, but hey, if you just hang on for a little bit longer or you work a little bit harder, you'll be able to find out all the missing pieces of information. And what we're saying now is that actually, in a state of fundamental uncertainty, every plan, every strategy, every kind of decision that you make, you need to be ready for it to change. And that's not because you don't have all the data. You've got all the data at hand. Indeed, you probably got more than you need. But what it is that something is going to happen and you don't know what it is yet. And that something could happen tomorrow. It could happen in a couple of weeks, but it's going to happen. And yes, you can predict, but ultimately there is a sense of unknown around it. And it really, I think, is a very different way of running a business, because in the past we've talked about resilience, but resilience was always about, okay, how do you build up enough kind of staying power that you get hit around with a bit of change or things go wrong, but then you kind of get back to normal and you'll be able to go again. What we're saying now is that you've got to be able to roll with it. You've actually got to lean into it and be part of this uncertain world. And by leaning in, you actually can get more out of it. So that's the fundamental premise that we're working with here. I'm going to go over to Eoin and get your reflections on this concept of fundamental uncertainty. And I think I was reading something the other day where pretty much if you're trying to do any kind of prediction or estimation, if you go beyond 3 months, it's pretty much you're just making it up.
Yeah, you're done for. And this genuinely has reduced. It's not just one of those things. It looks like that. The kind of the guru that Margaret Heffernan quotes is a guy called Tetlock, and he's the kind of guru of he's a super forecaster. He actually genuinely has a really good record. And it wasn't that long ago he was talking about 2 years being a robust horizon, and now we're down to 3 months. Yeah, I think it's
Wow.
remarkable. Yeah,
Okay.
and
Remarkable.
the other line I came across, Natal, I think maybe 2026's version of fundamental uncertainty is permanent volatility, which I thought
Okay.
was good. You know,
Like
not VUCA, thank God, but I feel like it just basically it's volatility as normal, right? That's kind of business as normal now. Likely.
Yes, definitely. And Laura, I'd love to go back to you and just sort of what does it mean to make business decisions in this environment? How much have you had to change your strategy as 2025 progressed?
Yeah, I think I've pivoted so many times. I've got whiplash this year. I think the things that though can be stable in a way, you can create stability in some form, where I think what Janet was saying before actually really resonated in that for us, if you focus in on the leading a business through a huge amount of change, I think if I focus on skills and I focus on making people part of the change, then I feel like we've implemented, we've got agents as employees, we've done hackathons, we've restructured, relooked at roles and responsibilities across the team. So we've gone through an incredible amount of change alongside the strategy and the business. And I think some of the things that still remain true, which have been true for a long time, is like bring the people with you. I had to come to terms quite a lot as a leader of this idea of like honesty and feeling like I had to be honest and build trust. And those things are really true, but they're not the same as being able to say everything's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. It's actually saying, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but what I can do is create the space for you to build the skills. I'm going to create the space for you to play with AI. I'm going to create the space for you to tell me how we're going to navigate your role going forward, and not just from a person to person perspective. I think where you see real change is actually where you connect departments together, and that's where things like hackathons become really interesting, where you're looking at workflows and connecting customer to customer success to product to marketing. That's where you start to see those big changes coming together. So by no means do I have a portion of the answers, but I do think there are ways in which you can create stability or focus or consistency when volatility is there, through kind of practices and behaviors that allow people to feel like, okay, well, I don't know what's going, but I can control how we're looking at today, how we're looking at tomorrow, how we're navigating change, and what my role is within that. So I think that's been really key this year. But yeah, we have pivoted our strategy consistently do. The way AI and the LLMs are changing, and therefore what you can do with them, what we can build with them, what our customers can do themselves, that's changing all the time. And so what was true last month is not true for what we need to be doing in 6 weeks' time. So having that consistent loop of data is been really key as well.
Yeah. And I think what you're emphasizing there is that actually methods of working become so important here, because actually that's what gives you the stability and the structure within such a world of fundamental uncertainty. So by having a consistent way that you look at strategy, you decide what you're doing in the next quarter, you then, run your first cycle of work, you review, you adapt, you go again. Having that is always true, even if each time you do the cycle you change something, you adapt something, it gives people that sense of security. I think that's what I'm starting to realize.
I'm thinking
always
dynamic
that, but I think
stability.
that's it. Sorry, Ellen.
Sorry, I was going to say dynamic stability is the phrase that springs to mind, right? It's the concept from the, even if it's rough, you keep moving, and that provides a bit of stability in itself, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I like that. And Alice has shared, it's felt at times like teams have gone more concrete in building walls around them versus sharing. I assume this is because they've been worried about what might happen. And I think that's the danger here is how do you stop your organization going too siloed, to kind of within the team? And how do you keep that sharing and that kind of collaborative review constantly happening across the organization? And that's by having some of those common methods. Yeah, go, Janet.
I'm getting too enthusiastic here. Yeah, I mean, I think this is why I've got such a passion for skills and people also really owning their own skills and getting that message across to people. You know, don't worry about what department you're in. Don't worry about your job title. Don't worry about what might happen in 6 months' time because, you know, as Laura said, you know, all that somebody can say to you is your skills will be of value. You know, we're going on this journey, but we don't know what the future looks like. So, you know, encouraging people to rotate around and really find a way to kind of gather their own skills and deploy transferable skills in other bits of the business really starts to create that greater sense of collaboration. I think it can be very exciting if you get it right.
It can be. And there's something that I've kind of been exploring, this idea of kind of bringing togetherness. So how do you actually, to kind of create this workplace elasticity, this idea of bending and stretching and coming back together, you essentially constantly need to help people feed into a bigger, I suppose, for want of the better word, purpose. But that could be a product vision. That could be, you know, taking something to market, IPO. It could be that you believe your product is going to better the world, but you need to bring that storyline into what people are doing. And if you can get that kind of, yes, we're all in it together and actually it's bigger than us, you can drive this momentum across the organization. And then people are more open to the idea that things keep changing, because that's all about moving towards this vision, and particularly if that's then kind of complemented with some key ways of working. Yeah.
Yeah, and particularly what you were saying before about looking for purpose, if that really helps to align them to that sense of purpose, belonging to that community that is, you know, the
Yes.
that they're in.
One of
Yeah.
the practices. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, go. Yeah.
I was going to say one of the practices I love from product is the retros. And I found they've become really important when you're going on an unknown journey because they help you to stop and recognize how far you've come and also, you know, what needs to be done and how you do things differently. But actually there was something that really resonated with me with the team. We do them in personal development conversations, right? They're like mini retros on yourself, but mini business retros or asking some of the hard questions that cover departments, then creating a goal, working towards it, and then doing a retro about how it went. And even if you're failing fast obviously is a really good thing to do, but you need to stop and recognize the journey. It's been something that's been really, that really resonated with the team because the vision's really helpful, but like it can feel relentless, you know, like change. And that's how I think people feel, right? There's change.
Yes.
Whereas if you evolve, stop, retro, learn something, move on, it feels more like a progressive journey than it does the whiplash, the constant change, the feeling exhausted by it. So I think there's some practices in there that can really help make it feel like a journey.
I like that. Yeah, that cycle of plan, do, review, adapt actually becomes so key because it gives you this sense of progression, as opposed to we're just going in different directions every time. Losing the ability to speak. Yeah, exactly. And clear purpose needs clear priorities. Feels like companies still have too many change programs all at once. And I do think that's a good call out. What this actually also equals is ruthless prioritization. You can only do a couple of big things. And I'm still seeing so many organizations going after 40 projects all at the same time.
It just kills
being
people.
overwhelmed.
You know?
I know. And
the stuff doesn't happen, and then that's when the fatigue sets in, etc.
Very much so. Yeah.
I think that quarterly focus as well, Laura, you mentioned as well. I think that's really helps people. They feel like, okay, I can see the end of the quarter, right? I can work on this thing, and then we'll get our head up. We'll do a retro, and we'll see where we are.
Definitely. Okay, so topic number 2 is when ethical emergencies become an everyday crisis. So what happened at the start of the year is we called out that we had an ethical emergency. And it was a sort of a combination of, over the last few years, in our reports, we had focused on the climate emergency. And we were seeing that as not only something that was quite, impactful and profound and impacting the way that we were living and working, but more and more was also an interesting opportunity for organizations to align themselves with a planet-friendly EVP. And there was a lot of data coming out that, young people in particular wanted to work with organizations that were more climate aware. We then started this year, and it felt like not only did the climate topic explode, but particularly what we saw was an attack on something that we now are sometimes even worried about using the full term, but that was diversity, equity, and inclusion. And over the years, or over this year, I've had people get in contact saying it feels like a human-centric approach is now under question, and in parts of the world has actually been under attack. And this has led to a lot of HR leaders unsure of the position to take. How much of a stand do you make versus how much do you just link it into, well, this is how we do business around here? But one of the key kind of call outs has come is that the more that you make inclusive behaviors and values part of what you do as a business, because actually diversity equals good business, the less kind of feelings you take out of the debate. But it's been a really interesting year in that sense. And I think it's overlaid with this sort of intense investment in AI as the promise to everything. And we sort of let go of some of the things that make workplaces a nicer place to be, it feels like. We got a little bit things got a bit brutal, things got a bit harsh. So we thought we might ask our one white male in our panel today to make some comments about what's your thoughts about the kind of ethical emergencies that we've faced. I think we've even just seen, there's so much that sits in this space. There's the polarized debate that we've got on social media. There's the kind of, political tension we're seeing across Europe and other countries. We've had, Nazis protesting and marching on the streets where we've never seen before. But meanwhile, people are kind of craving a sense of community and connection. So it's sort of, we've got paradoxes at play. It's a really interesting space to be in. What's your thoughts, Eoin?
Yeah, definitely. I came across something recently that I guess I am, and this may be from a white male perspective, but I have a degree of I have a teeny cautious kind of glimmer of optimism on this, and I'll tell you why. So two things. One is there's a nice book came out a couple of months ago written by some behavioral scientists, and they were saying that, DEI has really had a hammering this year. Absolutely. But what they said as well, that there were it was far reaching in its ambitions, right? I mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion are big topics if you took all those three things out. And they said maybe the way to go now is actually fairness. And they talked about it in two senses. So one was kind of trying to level the playing field, which I think is very much under the equity side of DEI. But I also think that fairness is, okay, everyone has an interpretation. But theirs was around trying to build fair organizational policies and then doing it, then bringing evidence to bear to show that. So some of those were actually just behavioral nudges, but some were more profound, right, in terms of restructuring. So I thought that was interesting. And then the other element that I thought was, I guess we're seeing some kind of green shoots politically, because inequality is rife, right? But I do think there's some green shoots, but I also have some concerns. So the green shoots are people like Mandani winning in New York, with an explicitly socialist mandate. Here in the Netherlands, Rob Jetten, pulling ahead of the far right. That's positive. He's a very middle center leader. I am concerned still that inequality, I just look and see so many I see this kind of structural inequality still being built in the housing market in so many places. There's so much inherited wealth, etc. Even I was really surprised to learn recently that France has the highest number of billionaires, I think, per capita, and it's not getting better. Apparently, it's gone worse. So that concerns me.
Yeah. So I think that's, I think inequality is an interesting one. And actually, I was speaking to someone today at an organization, and they said what they're needing to be mindful of is that senior leaders can be in a really different living experience to the rest of their organization.
Yeah.
And as CEO pay, becomes more and more separated from the reality of everyday pay, there need to be careful not to come across as this sort of positive, oh, everything's great, come on, everybody, let's work
Entitled,
together.
basically.
Entitled,
Super
yeah.
entitled, right?
So I think, and someone, the quote was, they don't know that people in our organization are in survival mode, not purpose mode. And I thought that was really interesting. So it's about also how do you help your leaders ensure that there's a connection with what's the reality for people in their organization.
Yeah. And I think it is some as well, that kind of bringing that degree of humility, that idea of servant leadership, and really understanding the experience of employees. I think because basically everything structurally is going to remove them from that. They will have to, and we can help them, bring that employee into the room for them, right? And I think that's where tools we like, right? Like, personas and experience maps really help because they bring it into a more data friendly or a data format. And you can say, hang on, look, this comes out of evidence, right? So.
Yeah, definitely. I would say one of the best restructures kind of exercises I ever saw someone do was off the back of attending one of my programs, which was fabulous, about agile HR. But they went and they needed to do some restructuring for their part of a big bank. And so they got all the managers in a room. They did a big kind of experience map of what the restructure was going to be like. They got the managers to think of different personas, the people that were going to stay, the people that were going to leave, and got them to step into the shoes of those people. And it was really insightful. So the managers were then calling out things they had to do to ensure that they motivated and kept the right people, but then also for the people that were leaving, around how did they make sure they understood it wasn't about their worth. It was much more about, not the right time for certain skills, and they had overinvested in certain ways. So it was a really
And then they
great
get that
example
felt.
of
They
more,
feel
yeah,
they have that a feeling of the experience, right? Which is
exactly. Yeah.
right.
Cool. Okay, we're going to do a bit of a shift in kind of topic and now sort of step into the workplace, and something that's been a really big focus for our PXO is actually looking at helping the HR business partner transition into a more product-led strategic way of working. And last week I was in the Netherlands, and I was working with a group of HR business partners at a company called TomTom, and we looked at exactly this. And what we started to explore was, yes, we've been talking about strategic HR business partner skills for basically as long as I've been in this career, but we've always missed a trick when we had the conversation. We focused all pretty much on the business partner's ability to design strategy, and it actually has got nothing to do with that. It's actually about your commercial awareness and your ability to help the business solve problems. So we've actually reframed this. We're even using terms like the employee experience account manager, and this is about a HR business partner understanding the employee experience product, able to sell it in to the different parts of the business, knowing that it will fix certain problems, but being the commercial voice back to the HR team to help them ruthlessly prioritize what to work on next and why. And this really is very much like operating as a business leader, much less about being a kind of a HR advisor, which I think is where we've kind of went wrong with this for so long over the years. I know Janet is very passionate about this topic. What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, this is my pet topic as per the conversation we had however many months ago it was now. Certainly for me, these constant conversations about, how we structure, what's the balance between L&D and HR, what are we going to create in terms of products that we can then launch and get these pesky business partners to sort of deploy them into the business. And, my own experience of doing the integration of Cambridge University Press and Cambridge Assessment and managing, a huge portfolio of projects taught me that unless you've got the business partner at the heart of that, and they really understand and they're almost commission what's needed, and they become that sort of test bed for some of the new things maybe an L&D team might want to deploy. Understanding how things are going to land before you spend ages in the stationery cupboard developing something amazing that you think, would be the one size will fit the whole organization. And of course, one size fits nobody. So it's really taking that kind of agile mindset to the heart of the role of a business partner, really having those good conversations about the business value, really helping them to get alongside those business leaders and really understand what that looks like. So yes, as you can tell, it's a subject that I'm very passionate about and have been talking to lots of people about since I kind of went on this journey for myself. But really
Yes.
interested in what other people on the call actually think about it.
Yeah, totally. Please pop your comments or questions into chat. We actually had a few people, when we asked you what was 2025 like, quite a few people mentioned this transition. So it seems to be a really hot topic. It seems to be one that our profession is very aware of. I think it's also because what sits sort of behind it is that there's a thought that AI will automate and take on some of the more transactional nature of HR. We've always kind of, held that up as a great thing and that therefore we instantly become strategic. But what I've realized is you don't. You actually need to know how to operate differently. I think it's also a big call out that the historical career pathway that we've had from advisor into HR business partner actually doesn't set you up for success. And actually you need to be leaning on skills that come much more from commercial, marketing, digital transformation. Those are the skills that you actually want to see in a HR business partner. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if you've come through a traditional vertical route, one which we know, as you say, is being disrupted now, it's a fantastic way to really take that next step in your own career and really be ready for the role of a CPO. Because always it's been, well, I've only been a business partner, so I need to go and spend some time in L&D, or I've only been in L&D, I need to go and spend some time as a business partner. Actually, what you need to do is lean into this way of working and I think it then is a fantastic precursor for being a CPO, actually, regardless of what path you've come up.
Yeah, definitely. So it's time in business, it's knowing how to run a P&L, it's understanding commercial problems, and it's knowing how to help the wider HR team or broader HR team prioritize the right business problems to solve. And it's much less about policy and process. One thing that I realized when I was working with the team the other week is we had to move away from this constant debate of BAU versus strategic work.
Oh, yeah, that's the other one.
Oh my God, endless kind of. And what we actually realized is that you talk about problems to solve. Some problems are very predictable. They require best practice, good practice, and you get them done, or you move them on to other parts of HR or possibly parts of the organization. Other problems are unpredictable, they're complex, and this is where you need to spend time doing diagnostic and actually probably create something new or go and find some stuff that already exists and curate that and sell it into the business. So it actually leans on systems thinking in that way. And the more that you can actually sort of embrace that way of working, the more effective you'll be in that business partner role.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent.
And that whole kind of BAU debate, is one that certainly I had a lot. And sometimes it can be, it can be at the back of it, can be a resistance to change. Sometimes it's just can't see the wood for the trees, but it's that challenge to business partners. If you're really going to be strategic, you have to work out a smarter way of delivering that BAU.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and then hot topic number 4. I was trying to think of a way of how not to talk about AI, but I don't think you can when you do an end of year event for 2025. But what we want to call out is that what we've found is that there was a big narrative, particularly at the start of the year, that, well, AI, it's inevitable, it's just going to happen, and you don't really have any choice about it. Now, yes, I don't think you can not kind of lean in to AI. You kind of got to get your head around it. You need to understand what it is, but we definitely have agency when it comes to this topic. And the more that we talk about what that agency is, the more we try and make conscious decisions of how we work with AI in our workplaces, how we decide on how to use data, what's the way that we, combine human and machine when it comes to our production line, the better the workplace is going to be. But the more we can actually shape this future. And I think more and more we're starting to see a bit of a kind of, pause and reset around this topic, primarily because I think we're all scared that the markets are about to crash. But even more than that, actually there's more and more evidence that if you want to make AI successful in the workplace, you actually need humans. Who would have thought? Laura, what's your kind of reflecting back on 2025? You've learned so much about embracing AI in your workplace. You've had a lot of it just forced on you by senior executives deciding that AI was the answer. So what's your kind of key takeaway this year? What would you like to share with people around this topic?
I think always starting with, so we have a principle in Hive called the AHA principle, AHAH, AHA. Any Alan Partridge fans out there will appreciate it. It's basically just human in the loop. Use AI to kick you off, like generate an idea, like don't start from a blank page, like put some ideas down and get it to help you formulate the ideas. Then you interrogate it, like put your human touch over the top. Then think about, okay, how can AI make it better? How can it refine it, work with me, build on it? And then how do I put the final touches back in at the end? Like continually working in a loop like that. And we do this right the way through from coding to product to marketing. Everything has a human in the loop where humans are checking and iterating with AI. But we did a big hackathon just recently, actually, where we were looking at, can we build agents as employees in the organization? And what I thought was really interesting as we did that was all this year, I think we've had this massive trough of disillusionment of people trying to get AI to do some really big complex challenges and it just being rubbish. You're spending hours trying to get it to work to only realize that you probably could have just gone back and done it quicker yourself. And so there's this constant, and then some moments of like, whoa, that was super cool. Like that's saving me tons of time. That's amazing. So I think we've got this kind of like, again, it's the scales, right? These amazing moments, these moments where it's just really frustrating and you kind of reverting back. And when we were doing the hackathon and we were looking at, where does AI play in our organization? What can it do? What I thought was quite interesting as I'm learning, by the way, I'm in that hackathon learning, not teaching. And I think what I thought was to go and create an agent that could do all of these really cool things. And actually what we needed to do is think about it in a way of, this is somebody who started in the organization who has no idea, no context as to what's happened, no context how to do it. So how would you brief that person? Like with high level of description, high level of coaching. And also you don't just tell them to go and do a task and expect them to do it perfectly. You have to work with AI. It's never, at this point in time, it's never going to just run off and do something perfectly for you. It's just like a brand new employee in the organization that you need to work with. You need to, it'll iterate, it'll learn with you, it'll build emotions, apparently, according to some research, but it will iterate and it will work with you. So you have to think about those things. The other thing I thought was give it a massive task. And actually what the output was design 50 small, very minute things that it can do, rather than go, here's one big job, I want a new CMO in my organization and I'm going to create an agent to be my CMO. It's not possible today, but I can get 50 tasks really nicely done that'll iterate and improve and grow. But I need to be able to do all the human things like measure, check the output and ensure it's doing what it should be doing, putting the human in the loop. And so actually there's all of the principles of thinking about how you work with employees, someone who doesn't know anything about the business, not assuming it's just going to be a one and done perfect solution. Like all of these little things that we know because we do it when people join our organization and we work with them. I think is the same in terms of how you then as a human need to be able to iterate and work and check and test and work alongside AI. It can't do the big complex CMO role today, but it probably can do 50 small tasks that layer up to a CMO role, which then allows the human to do more of the not strategic, that's not the word that you're using before, but it can be more strategic, more of the deeper thinking, more of the iterating,
critical thought,
more human, more customer centric, more product thinking, all of that stuff. So I think AHA principle, small tasks, evolve and iterate with it, would be the kind of key three things that we've learned this year.
No, definitely. And I know, we've called it co-intelligence as well, this idea of building better, enhancing your ways of working by leaning into AI. But exactly that is that often it doesn't equal a quick productivity burst because often, as you lean in, you start using it, and it takes even longer to get the task done because actually you're learning what's the best approach. And even by kind of partnering with AI to get a particular report done or a particular task, what I find is that it actually goes longer at the start because you're building up this kind of understanding of what is it about, what's the best prompt, what's the kind of context that they needed, and then you start to kind of get this kind of rhythm to it. So a kind of a bit of call out just today, we've released our AI short report. And as you all know, we do a yearly priorities report, and that will be coming out for 2026 around March. But in the interim, we wanted to actually share our thoughts on AI. Alice, who works with me, spent hours reviewing all the reports from McKinsey's and Deloitte, gives you her view, which is quite an interesting take. But in particular, kind of the real call out here is that no one leads on this. And the only way to really make AI work in the workplace is to see it as humans are needed in the loop. So no one's leading, everyone's learning, have to do it in a multi-skilled way. You have to see it as a cultural change. And once you do that, once you have HR sitting next to tech, sitting next to operations, and understanding what is possible in terms of how you bring AI into production, then you actually start to really build how could we enhance our outcomes rather than just automating or replacing people with AI. So really good kind of report. Do kind of check that one out. So we had spent hours with Gemini a week or so ago, got to a point, then came back to revisit today, and it had all gone. I suspect it was user error, but it shows I'm still learning. Cool. Okay, so we're going to kind of move into 2026 and kind of give you all a big hug and say it's okay when we're all in it together, and you're still standing. There's still hope. Just don't make it to reflecting on 2025 the icebreaker in any of your upcoming workshops. So we'll do a quick shout out of what you're looking forward to, or what's your thoughts of 2026. I'd love to see your comments or your questions. Really happy to kind of answer any of those and share. But I'll do a little call out to my two people I have left. So Janet, what's your kind of thoughts for 2026 going forward?
I'm going to embrace it with a level of resilience and optimism, I think, and see it as an opportunity for a bit more creative thinking.
Cool, excellent. And Laura, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to take it I'm going to be quite selfish in 2026 and carve out more time to invest in me and my skills, and just carry on being curious and maybe temper some of my frustration when it's not going right. But yeah, I'm looking forward to climbing what feels like another mountain this year in terms of personal development.
Yeah, definitely. And I really want to kind of leave you with this kind of big sort of theme that we've landed on, and possibly this might start to shape our report next year. But uncertainty gives you creative choice. And actually, by leaning into uncertainty, you can there's more opportunity comes to you. Yes, does it feel a bit scary? Yes, does it mean you need to experiment? And yes, does it mean you need to make a decision where you don't know everything? But yes, it can be really, really powerful. So lean in, embrace it, and actually we might together be able to make the world the better place that we want it to be. And I think that's the other key kind of call out here is that throughout the year, I've realized that community and connection is actually central to making sure we both feel like we have the support to keep doing the jobs that we do, but also that you're okay. You're not alone. You've got people to talk with. So that's one reason I've sort of come back to doing these events and actually doing retro style on Zoom. So do reach out, connect, have a conversation, because most people are feeling overwhelmed like you are. And actually, when you talk about it, you just start to feel a lot better. And everyone loves a picture of a doggy. And so that's what I'm going to leave you with for 2025. Please stay in touch. As I said, we've got our new report. That's all come out on your mailing list today. But if you're not on our mailing list, use the QR code on your screen now. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's lovely to have spent 2025 with you. And I hope to see you in 2000. And God damn it, we're going to make it a good year. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Alrighty. The three of us are still standing, well, sitting, as the case may be.
I know.
There was a couple of times where you nearly went into super cough mode, but you managed to avoid that.
I know. I'm so sorry. Oh, God. I know.